Good morning, everybody. I want to welcome everybody to part 2 of the Public Engagement Committee. I wanted to thank all of those members who were able to make it yesterday. We truly had a remarkable event where we were able, for the first time in the history of the UC Board of Regents, to go to a public school in Los Angeles at Horace Mann UCLA. And we were able to actually talk to students, faculty members, and as Chair Perez said, it was not only important for the substance, it was also important symbolically, and I think everybody agreed. I did want to, if you don't mind, before we start, read something that our Vice Chair, Christine Simmons, who's not able to make it to this meeting, wanted to say. As you know, she was incredibly instrumental in formulating the agenda and getting the pieces together for our meeting. And so she says, dear fellow committee members, regents, and staff, I'm truly sorry I can't be here for today's committee meeting. I'm so grateful for all of your support and participation in yesterday's session. I feel it is a great start to our path forward for true progress of not only our relationships with the community, alumni, and legislature, but the outcomes we can impact in a meaningful way. As Chair Perez mentioned in our session this morning, it was indeed symbolic. It was also necessary, as it reminds me of one of my favorite mantras: if it's for us or about us, it can't be without us, which I feel epitomizes our mission here at UC, and especially with this Committee on Public Engagement and Development. Again, thank you, and Chair Lieb and I look forward to working with you in the next meetings to make them even more impactful, and we are excited to be able to do that. We're going to have 2 more off-site meetings, and I think as I'm Chair of Public Engagement, I'm going to make sure that all of our meetings that we have are done in such a way that we're out in the community actually getting public engagement. So thank you very much. And with that, we might want to take roll.
Okay, will do.
We don't have a quorum yet. So we are waiting for, we have a quorum. Thank you. Whenever the Chancellor of the California Community Colleges comes in, that alone makes it a quorum. But I hope that those that were not, and I know several regions were not able to make it yesterday. Before we start today, I want to let you know we had actually 15 regions there at the committee. Actually at the site. And I think it's important, if you can, to go back and view some of the moments. Regent Sherman said, and all the time he's been on the Board of Regents, he was closest to tears. Never been as close to tears as yesterday, and I can see why. I was in the same way. Some of the people who are struggling, and the most important thing that I thought that came out of it, which is just astonishing to me, is the lack of digital access in the local community. We rely so much on online and all those services that it comes, and to find out that I think it's like 5% of the kids in that area have access to computers at home. That's truly an amazing, horribly disturbing fact. So I think that was one of the main things that came out yesterday, and I'm hoping that in future meetings we'll continue to explore that issue. The other thing that I think was most important from the issue yesterday is that, and it explains a little bit why Horace Mann was picked as a UCLA school. I think it was a very smart decision by Chancellor Block to do that. You can't just start a high school and try to get people fitted for the A through G and get them ready for the UCs. It starts really, as we found out yesterday, in preschool. Universal preschool is an important part of that. So we have to work really closely with other partners in education, K-12 community colleges, and even the preschool area, because it really starts early, and it's important that we get the mathematics and reading skills. So with that, I think maybe before we even start, I might want to just have Chancellor Block give an observation or two about yesterday's meeting.
Well, I was also moved, and I've obviously been there before, and I know the principal pretty well. But as I said yesterday, I said it's all about leadership, and we have a wonderful principal there, deeply dedicated to the community and to the school. So I'm really confident that we're going to see steady improvements in the school. And our school at Pico Union, the old Ambassador Hotel site, had 99% college going rate, which was just tremendous. Now, some of the students are going to 2-year schools, some are going to 4-year schools, but it shows you what you can do when you engage. So it's difficult to do these things, and, we have limited bandwidth to take on these kinds of responsibilities, but I'm really proud of everybody that's been involved.
Thank you very much. Okay, with that, do you want to take roll for it?
Okay, this is Public Engagement Development Committee. Blum, Goober, Kiefer, Lansing. Here. Lieb,
Here.
Napolitano, Newsom, Oakley. Here. Perez, Rendon, Sherman. Here. Simmons, and Zettel. Chair, you have a quorum.
Great, and we're pleased to have the Lieutenant Governor here with us, to hear a former, I think part of the reason why you're here is to talk to a former Lieutenant Governor, so that's great. Our first item is something that first of all, I'd like approval of the minutes, if we can, for our July 17th meeting. Moved, seconded, all those in favor? It is approved. We go to P4. One of the things that we do as a university of a public engagement committee is endorse all of the campaigns for the various campuses. And I had the pleasure of having extensive discussions with our chancellor, Chancellor Gilman from University of California, Irvine, about his plan. And I think most of us have probably read the materials on it. I'm assuming they have. And so I don't think we need to go into much detail. I think maybe just introduce it, and we will endorse it. I guarantee that. Unless we decide to up the amount. I don't know. There was some discussion of that.
Well, let me just say I'm here. Thank you very much for your attention. I can go through the slide deck, but you've read the materials. The main thing I want you to know is that I hope that I can invite you to enthusiastically endorse this campaign. Very important for the campus. We've been working on it very hard. And I wouldn't be a good chancellor if I didn't also say, and we would also welcome your participation in the success of this campaign. So be sure to track me down as appropriate. There's nothing better than a partnership with a great university to have a positive impact in the world.
You were looking at me, but you should be looking at Regent Goober. Okay, thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve and endorse the campaign? Oh, I've got a comment from
Yeah, so I'm
Mr.
not on this committee, but I wanted to step in to obviously enthusiastically endorse it. Not that you need my endorsement necessarily, but I came here obviously serving as a regent, but Chancellor Gilman reminded me at one of my first meetings that I had 2 lapels. So I have my regent pin and I can wear my anteater pin here today. So I think I'm using my anteater pin today. But I just want to obviously say that from the campus's standpoint, as an alumni of my home campus, it's really the leadership of Chancellor Gilman and Vice Chancellor Brian Hervey. I think they've done just tremendous things on the campus, obviously. You've all seen the numbers there in terms of where we are to start. But there is a enthusiasm on the campus. And I just want you all to know that. Would love to echo the comments from Chancellor Gilman to come visit and do the participation. But there is that real challenge about the numbers. So you kind of joked about the numbers going up, but I am confident that we're going to be blowing through those numbers, not just on obviously the fundraising part, but the really dual nature of it to increase the engagement. And I know, and speaking from as an alumni and as a former board member of the Alumni Association, that we're fully committed to making sure that that all comes together on our dual goal campaign. So obviously, enthusiastic endorsement on this effort.
Thank you very much. And with that, I'll entertain a motion. Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The campaign is on.
Thank you all very much. You'll be hearing from me.
Thank you. We move to our main topic of discussion. And, one of the things I was going to mention is chair of public engagement. The most important thing I think we have to do is get out in the community and meet people. But the other important thing is to find out some things that are going on at UC where they are addressing what I consider some of the most important public policy issues that we face in the state of California. We are so honored today to have former Governor Gray Davis here, who's been instrumentally involved in the fighting wildfires with a technique and an opportunity to work with UC research that has been incredibly effective. When I saw it myself, I said this is something that I think it's important for the Public Engagement Committee to actually witness, because we often forget that the University of California, the premier academic institution in California, has so many resources at its hands, and the beauty of it is we are able to actually tackle some of the biggest public policy issues we face in California. So I'm pleased not only to have the Governor, Gray Davis, here, but also we have the current Lieutenant Governor here, and we have the chair of our board and former Assembly Speaker John Perez, who is here to listen to what we're doing. So thank you. If you would like to introduce, and we'll start.
Thank you, Regent Lieb, and thank you for your leadership on this committee and bringing to the attention of the regents and the whole university fantastic work that your scientists and researchers are doing today. Bit of background, I had a meeting when I was governor with Alan Greenspan. It was during the energy crisis, 2001, I think, and I couldn't get any help from him relative to what to do on that. But he says, I don't want you to feel sorry for yourself because California has something that no other state has. And I said, what's that? He says, you have many more research universities than any other state. I just assumed Massachusetts had more than we did. He said, oh no, you have 9 UC campuses, Caltech, Stanford, and USC. Massachusetts has 7. No other state has more than 5. In addition to that, we have more Nobel laureates, and every year, California generates about 5 times as many patents as the next state with all the universities combined. And that is not Massachusetts, that is New York. So we are a powerhouse when it comes to research, science, and innovation. I think it's a very good thing because as the world evolves and changes, we can always reinvent, change the rules, come up with some new approach to life that keeps California and America relevant. But that leads me to reaching out to the professors at California professors that came up with this technology I want to share with you. Before I begin, I just want to, actually, Chancellor Khosla did. No, I'm good. Okay, all right. You were going to introduce me, but I think
You said
Rich,
it way better than I ever could. So
Rich,
thank you.
Rich cut you out, which I think is not showing enough respect.
No, you didn't.
I am sorry. Chancellor Kosola.
No, it's great, because I think what the governor said is really amazing. If I'm going to add something, the only thing I want to add is, he's the architect of Cal ISIs, and a lot of what you see out here today was an outcome of the investments that came from the governor and the state, both. So, thank you.
But thank you, Chancellor. We've worked on a number of projects, and I'm really thrilled with all the upward mobility that UC San Diego has experienced. And I want to thank also Chairman Perez for being here, the Lieutenant Governor. This is like almost a campaign meeting with all these old friends.
Yes, but it's the UC Irvine campaign. That's what we're here for. So.
In the best sense of the word. But so obviously, what brought us here today was a discussion on wildfires and the work that your scientists and your professors have done. So the stars of this show are Neil Driscoll and Graham Kent. Graham, where are you? Graham? Raise your hand. Graham. So a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, they were both working at Scripps, which is like about a 9-iron from UC San Diego. And they developed this technology that can not only detect earthquakes, but it can help spot fires 80 miles away and give instant images appear on the iPhones of fire chiefs, U.S. Forest Service, and the BLM. And so for the first time, fire chiefs are not flying blind. They're not depending on a third or fourth hand account. They can see for themselves exactly how robust the flames are, and they know exactly how many trucks to send. And that makes all the difference in the world. In a moment, we'll show you some pictures of the Lilac Fire, but I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but back up. So Dick and working with Rudy Murillo, who works closely with the Chancellor, also with Dick McCarthy of the Seismic Safety Commission. He worked closely with Neil and Graham. And then 2 professors at Berkeley are working on artificial intelligence, which is also a piece of the puzzle here. Carl Penny Parker and Tim Ball. So all of that horsepower associated also with Caltech. Caltech JPL has joined us. The principal person there is Ken Wolfenberger, but we went out and met with them. I was with Neil and Graham and Rudy, and they are a powerhouse in themselves, and they're talking about uploading data to their satellites and downloading data that can help us spot fires and respond quickly. The key to fighting fires is getting on them quickly. You really have to get on in the first 15 minutes, no later than an hour. If it's later than an hour, you are playing defense and you have many fewer options. The first adopter of this was UC San Diego. Neil and Graham went to see Carolyn Wynn and Scott Drury. 4 days after the presentation was made to them, they started installing the cameras. 2 months later, they had the first big fire, the Lilac Fire. That was put out in about 55 minutes. 150 structures went down, very severe fire. But again, the fire chief knew exactly what he was dealing with, and he checked around in the county. No other fires were going on. He deployed every truck. Every truck went to the Lilac Fire, and it was put out in 58 minutes. That is the kind of aggressiveness that we need to have if we are going to play offense. Playing defense, like we did in the, what was the fire, Neil, in Santa Barbara in 17?
Woolsey?
No,
Oh, the Thomas.
the Thomas Fire. So the Thomas Fire was in sort of the Montecito, Santa Barbara area, and the people thought they saw flames at about 6 o'clock at night, but they weren't sure whether that was a new fire or an old fire, and so for a lot of reasons, no truck rolled till 8 in the morning. That is 14 hours. You can't give a fire a 2-hour head start, much less 14 hours, so you're playing defense the whole way. We lost 22 lives then, not so much because of the fires, but the mudslides that followed. If you want to save lives, save properties, and in a minute I'll show you why you can help save the planet, these cameras are like a gift from God. They are the best technology American has created, and California researchers played a huge role in that. Neil is now at UC San Diego. Graham is over at the University of Nevada at Reno. Between them, they have, let's see, let's go to, yeah. So here's a little definition, just describes the cameras. So these are high definition television, high definition, they operate on Amazon web-based services. Every second, data goes to the fire chief where the fires are, and he knows exactly how many trucks to dispatch, as I said, and so do the fire men and women, because they have their mobile devices, so if things change between the time they were dispatched, they can make adjustments. This is a huge improvement over what we were doing before. We were, in many cases, just, we had no eyes in the sky. We really were just flying blind. So anyway, the Lilac, so here's, this shows, no, let's go back to that one. So that, at the very top of this picture, you can see the camera. It's about a football size, and they can see 70 to 80 miles. They would have spotted the Thomas Fire in an instant, and there would have been some response within 15, 20, 30 minutes, and that would have had a very different ending. Let's go to the Lilac Fire. Okay, so this is the fire, 4,100 acres burned, 105 structures destroyed, but no loss of life. There's been, I want to stress this point, there's been no loss of life in San Diego in the 2 years that they've installed these cameras. They also have a phenomenal meteorology department, which I recommend to every utility. Combination of being able to tell whether it's a low humidity day or a high humidity day, and winds, strong winds, low humidity, you know you're in for a wildfire. But with the artificial intelligence component, which will come out of Berkeley, we'll even have more predictive capabilities going forward. Now, just a couple other points I want to make, and I want to turn it over to Neil. So here's a couple other reasons why we have to be interested in doing a better job. Oh, wait a minute, I made a big mistake. I forgot to give credit to Governor Newsom, who has changed the paradigm I know of no governor who has been more proactive on natural disasters than Governor Newsom. He was at Paradise, I'll come back to that in a moment, 2 or 3 times. He's been out at the Office of Emergency Services. He has them reporting directly to someone in his office. He took another person who was leaving his office and put him out at CAL FIRE. I mean, he is running this show, changing the paradigm, and that augurs well. Plus, he loves these infrared cameras. He ordered 100, put them in the budget for the parts of the state that are not covered by utility. So that will be helpful. Now, we have roughly 250 cameras installed. We probably have to get to 600 to 700. When they're fully deployed, they will make a tremendous difference. The cost of the fires in 2017, according to the Insurance Commission, were $12.7 million. Insurance Commissioner Lara is doing a very good job of keeping the insurance companies from leaving the state. If you happen to have a home in a remote area, you'll find it very difficult to get fire insurance, much less reinsurance. So I want to commend him for doing that. But to put in perspective what $12.7 billion is, that is more money than the state spends on all levels of higher education. 10 UC campuses, 24 or 5 Cal State campuses, and more than 100 community colleges. More money than they spend on all 3 systems of higher education was the state sustained in damages in 2018. And 2019 was a worse year. That'll be closer to $20 billion. We cannot afford to do that. And if we continue to do that, no one will be able to get insurance, and it will literally bankrupt the state. One other point I want you to know, and this is not well understood. So when there's a fire, what happens? People's lives are lost, property is destroyed, and carbon is emitted to the environment. So in an article in the San Francisco Chronicle on Monday, I have his name here somewhere, but it was Monday Chronicle. The author said more carbon went into the environment in 2017 than all the collective efforts to reduce greenhouse gases took out. More went in because of the fires than went out. In 2018, it'll be even worse because that was a worse fire year. So that's not good. I signed the first bill in America that seriously reduced greenhouse gases in 2002, tailpipe emissions. That's still the largest producer of greenhouse gases. But if you're going to, whatever you do to reduce, make energy efficient electric cars, all that's good. But if you're going to just like a big eraser, eliminate all that when you have wildfires, you're working at cross purposes. So whether it's saving lives, saving property, more efficient use of public resources, or, as I said, helping save the planet, there are plenty of motivations to do a better job, to up our game when it comes to wildfires. So I think the region should, in conclusion, I think the region should feel a sense of pride in the kind of work that's come out of their professors. We are leading the nation. This is not a problem unique to California, and a lot of the people that I've identified are also working with states in the far west. They have a similar problem. So some of the technology we're developing here will benefit people living adjacent to California. But let me close with the Paradise Fire. So that killed 87 people, basically destroyed the town. About 1,800 structures destroyed. I had a sister-in-law and a niece that both had houses in Paradise, and both lost their homes. Happily, they're alive. But I want to give you a sense of the horror that occurs when there's a fire just leaping over freeways and leaping over roads. My niece, Marguerite, is at a fire station. There's been no evacuation announced. She hears a police officer telling the gas station attendant, I don't know why people are hanging around here because this is going to be a disaster. So she gets home and gets her child and had a boyfriend actually getting married in 2.5 weeks. And she gets on the road out of Paradise, but there's only one lane in and one lane out because all the city council people want you to shop. Well, that's great, but when you want to get out, that's not so great. So she decides if she stays on her side of the lane, she might not make it, and some people did not make it that were stated. So she goes over the median and drives against traffic, just hoping that no fire truck or emergency service vehicles coming the other way, and happily none were. That, everybody in Paradise has a story that will give you chills. And we don't want to put anyone we love in that kind of situation again. So we have to up our game, do a better job than we've done in the past. I'm optimistic because the governor is very proactive and totally gets the benefit of this technology. We now have night helicopters that Governor Brown authorized, but now they're being deployed. Until last year, we were using Huey helicopters. I used to be flown in them when I was in Vietnam. They can't work at night. You know, they have no cameras. Now we have the best technology in the helicopters. We have the best technology with the cameras, and we should be able to reduce the damages pretty dramatically. I think at a minimum, whether it's 12.7 or 20 billion, we can reduce that by 50%, and in some areas by 75%. That extra money can be used to support academic innovation, a whole bunch of other good purposes, and we can show the way for the rest of the country. So I'm very proud of what the academics have done, and I want to turn it over to Neil.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Regents, for allowing us to present some of this research that we've been doing. Regents Lieb, thank you for pulling this all together and organizing it. So, as the Governor said, we really want to thank Governor Newsom for his vision. I'm backing up here 3 slides because I'm going to get back to the phrase that is right from Governor Newsom, is we want to have a way to protect lives, wildfire, habitats, property. This is a collaborative research project by the University of California, University of Nevada, and University of Oregon. And I'd like to acknowledge my colleague Graham Kent, who used to be at UC San Diego, but he got stolen away from UNR by UNR, and he's the director of seismology there. I'm a seismologist also. So I'm a professor of geology and geophysics at UC San Diego. And you're probably saying, well, why is a seismologist talking to us about fire cameras? Well, it started at UC about 10 years ago, and it was to bring wireless information from the backcountry. And we started these with seismometers so that we could do early earthquake warning. But we had enough bandwidth that we could bring back information about wildfires. And that's when Graham Kent comes into the story, because Graham had the vision of developing these pan, tilt, zoom cameras farther than we had previously, and it's had impact. And all of the CAL FIRE, County OES will tell you that these are game changers. They use these cameras every day. And I was just at a meeting down with SDG&E. I'm on their advisory council for wildfires, and everyone in the room said these cameras change the way we fight fires. So here, in all metrics, 2018 was the worst wildfire disaster year in the history of California. Loss of life, acres burnt, property destroyed. Our group, never again can we let this happen. Okay, so what have we done? We've looked at the new extreme. There's no new normal. We're heating up the atmosphere at an unprecedented rate. This atmosphere, when these winds come down the Sierra, they're cold and they warm up, and their ability to draw moisture out of the fuels and soil is incredible. We call these things the atmospheric mosquito. The atmosphere is supercharged, and it makes the fuels so they just combust, so that embers can jump out in front of the fire and have a good likelihood of starting another fire called spotting. So here, this just shows here areas that have undergone 2 degrees since the late 1800s. And you look at California, okay? And we share some of these things with Colorado and Utah, up in Northern California and Oregon. And it's a good thing we aren't showing the map of Alaska, because Alaska is warming up faster than anywhere. Okay? Roger Revelle at the University of California, San Diego, with Charles Keeling, started the Keeling curve. And he said, we are conducting the largest geophysical experiment ever with CO2. I would like to add that scientists don't like to be in their experiments. Okay? All right? So here, as the governor said, I'm going to skip through this quickly. These are high-definition pan-tilt zoom cameras. They have near-infrared fire detection for night. We've developed a microwave communications network that's resilient. So if we have failure of one tower, we have mapped topologies to get the signal out. And we've shown this, Graham has shown this since he developed in 2013, the Tahoe, the Alert Tahoe network. We've been successfully bringing out information about wildfires from the backcountry to control centers, okay, to ECCs, to CAL FIRE, to County OES, Red Dog, and Sonoma. All right, and this network provides an unparalleled ability to confirm 911 calls. So when a 911 call comes in, we used to have to send an engine or an airplane. Now we can turn a camera. And that battalion chief knows how to marshal his resources or her resources. They know if it's windy, they can look at the color of the smoke, how it's bent over. So they have real-time information to make these important decisions. And as the governor pointed out, we have what's called this incipient fire phase. This phase of fire where we're on offense and we can suppress it. And I'm going to show you today data that supports that. This is not a dream. This is here. This is today. This is what we're doing.
Neil, if I might, we get 911 calls about fires, and in the past, that would result in dispatching fire trucks. But they can get confirmed by the cameras, and we found a couple cases where the address called in was incorrect. And so we were sending the trucks to the wrong location, and we were able to reroute the trucks to get into the fire. Through the use of the cameras.
Right, so another savings of time. So here, the University of California, our best product is our students, okay? And here are students that are deploying the camera. As the governor said, the camera sits up here. It's the size of a soccer ball. And these students are tower certified. They're learning electronics. They're learning AI. They're learning things that get them jobs. I've graduated 24 graduate students who are all employed in academia, government industry, and that's the success story of the University of California. I just wish they could take a picture where they got the whole camera structure in the frame, okay? So we're getting there. So this incipient fire phase, this is here, the campfire, and you can see here little wisps of smoke at 7:02 in the morning. And here, this is from the Oroville camera, about 15 miles away. And we're looking at the smoke here grow and grow. And 35 minutes into the fire, we have a full-on inferno. We're now not in the suppression phase. We're in the defensive mode. We're organizing evacuations. We're responding instead of driving. Okay? So here, this is the wildfire. The reason I show you, this is about 5 miles away from our camera that we repurposed on the Oroville Dam. And you can notice the tornadic activity. This tornadic activity puts embers high into the atmosphere so they can travel large distances. The Carr Fire was an EF3 tornado, 145-mile-an-hour winds. It was blowing trucks and cars across the road. These fires create their own weather. And once they get large enough, then they flow down these valleys and canyons. The Venturi effect funnels in more oxygen, and they just erupt. So we have to catch them early. And when we get in this tornadic activity like the Carr Fire, it actually jumped the Sacramento River. We thought that'd be an effective fire stop. So here, this was the Lilac Fire. This was December 7th. We had just finished installing all the cameras in like middle to late October. Carolyn Wynn and SDG&E are visionaries. And we walked in her office at the end of the week, and the beginning of the next week, we had funds to start deploying cameras. This here shows the Lilac Fire, and what I'd like you to focus is up on this panel here. We're first gonna see dust, and then we're gonna see the fire. So here we go, you can see it's windy, the antenna's moving, you're gonna see dust here, okay? There's puffs of dust, not smoke, that's dust. All right, right there, there's the beginning of the Lilac Fire. The fire, you can see the smoke's bent over. You can see that this is a red flag day. 50-mile-an-hour sustained winds, single-digit humidities. The fuels had been drying for weeks because our drought season is now longer. Okay, usually in December we'd have some rains by then, but we don't now. So this Lilac Fire burnt 4,100 acres, but there was no loss of life. And the reason Chief Meacham, CAL FIRE, was able to look at the cameras around the rest of the county, because he's responsible for the whole county. And days like that day, there's multiple ignition sites. But he looked around the county and he could use the cameras and say, I don't have any other threats right now. I'm gonna deploy everything I have. I'm going for it, all in. Under 5,000 acres, no loss of life. This is one of my data points. This is a red flag day. In the past, these were disasters, okay? So here, let's look, this is looking out towards Ramona, and this was a house fire that started the day after Veterans Day last year, okay? All right, so here we go. You gotta watch carefully to see the helicopter. So there's the house fire. House fires burn black. There it's changing over to white. You can see the helicopter, the sky crane from SDG&E coming and suppressing the fire. There's a still of the water drop. And here's a return to go get another dump. The pilot said, I didn't really put the house fire out as much as I collapsed the house. All right? This is why we didn't use airdrops on Notre Dame, because we wanted it to still be there. Okay? This amount of water is amazing when it's dropped from elevation at 8 pounds a gallon. How do you quantify the negative? Somebody says to me, you stopped that fire. How much did that save in lives? How much did that save in money, habitats, wildlife? That's a really hard question to answer, but we have data that I think can bear on this. So here, I don't know if you remember, the 2003 fire really changed the way San Diego looked at fire. This was a 270,000 acre fire, and it was started right here by a hunter who was lost. And he lit a flare. He wasn't lost anymore because he launched the largest fire in the state's history. And the winds were howling, and the fire and spotting jumped 10 lanes of the 15 down by Miramar. Look at where this fire started. There's fire corridors. Firefighters know this. They repeatedly catch on fire. Here's Julian here. Here's Poway. And you can locate yourself, Julian, Poway. The house fire was in the same corridor that in 2003 burnt across the 15 with the same weather conditions, red flag, single-digit humidity, and fuels that had been tinder dry. So now we suppressed a fire that started in that same corridor that would have burnt much farther, like the Witch Fire. Let's look. This is here, Scripps Ranch, 2003. They watched this fire come, and this was horrific, okay?
Let me just jump in here a second. So this is 2003 in the fall. One of the last things I did was oversee the response to this fire. And it is in the same area as the Ramona fire, which was put out in 55 minutes. So it should presumably have created the same havoc. 15 fatalities, 2,232 homes, 22 commercial properties, 273,000 acres. We had 500 fire trucks. 500 fire trucks. All I was doing was begging the Air Force generals to give them some super scooper we hadn't had. This is 2003. Didn't have access to before, and he provided. There was nothing like this before. But now that we have eyes in the sky, now that San Diego Gas and Electric has a phenomenal meteorology department and has all this data from about 2007 on, They have great predictive capabilities. Now we have a fire in the same area with the same low humidity, with the same winds. You expect pretty much the same set of casualties, but the Ramona fire, but no casualties, zero, put out in 58 minutes. That is a dramatic change from 2003.
Thank you. I was evacuated in the '03 and '07 fires in San Diego County. Graham's house was torched on the sidewalls as the fire proceeded down to his area in Tierra Santa. And you couldn't see. The visibility was zero. So you didn't know how to drive out of your driveway and go somewhere. You didn't know if you'd drive into fire. And our good friend Joe Kerr would tell you, when you're in these conditions as a firefighter, you're disoriented, you don't know where the fire is, and he says, you know it's close when you start seeing the rats run by you, and the deer, and finally the bear. He said that it's horrific when you have no visibility, and the '03 fire, you had no visibility, and embers were dropping out of the sky everywhere. So I think this gives us some metric to quantify the negative, okay? Let's just look at another example here. So I've just highlighted. So this is the Carr fire, okay? July 23rd. Estimates from insurance claims, 1 to 1.5 billion. I didn't put on fires on this list that were less than $1 billion. They didn't make the cut, okay? Like the Ferguson fire was only $800,000. So here, the Camp Fire that started on November 8th, this was a terrible day in California. We had the Camp Fire, 8.5 to 10.5 billion. And I'm sure the numbers, because these are only from claims that were from April of 2019. On the same day, the Holy Fire, a little later, started on November 8th, and the Hill Fire. So when you add these up, you're getting closer to $20 billion. As the governor said, 2017 was 12.7 billion. We can't keep doing this. We have to be proactive and use technology for quicker confirmation and detection, situational awareness, evacuating people so they're safe, and what happened to the governor's niece and others in Paradise never happen again. This is my picture. So after the Camp Fire, Graham called me. We were doing some repairs up in some of the Nevada cameras, switching out a modem. And I'm walking through the Sacramento airport, and the air quality is so bad it was like Beijing. This is my picture. So I went through those doors. I don't know why they're there, that say keep walking in Sacramento, and they open up and you're like, what are these for? But anyhow, I stopped right there at the pane of glasses and took this. And there was so much material and soot in the air that you can actually see the corona of the sun, okay? The air quality. So we call these cascading disasters. 3 to 4 months after the Camp Fire, hospital visits for lung-related diseases peaked. Asthma, okay? So this is a huge down-the-road cascading disaster. So we're not just spending tens, 20 billion to recover from the fire, we're spending billions of dollars for people's health.
Can I ask a couple of questions real quickly? And I know it's probably going to be later in your presentation, but I know some members have some time constraints, and I want to make sure we get to the meat of it. How many cameras do we have right now?
We have over 260 cameras deployed right now.
And then how much do you think they cost total so far?
So here, I just went through the billing. So far, when Graham sends me a few more invoices, I'd say we've spent somewhere on the order of $3 to $4 million.
And
So it's roughly $70,000 to install a camera, and that's not the ongoing maintenance, but that's a pretty good use of your money. I know nothing that is more cost-effective to reduce the damages of these fires than these cameras.
it's pretty unbelievable. I've seen that, and I was one of the homes, or my family was one of the families that was evacuated during the 2003 Scripps, the fire in San Diego.
Cedar
So
fire, right.
I know exactly, the Cedar Fire. The other thing is, how much do you think right now is under surveillance? In other words, what's the percentage?
I'd say we're, because of a lot of the rough country in the north, I'd say that varies, but if you average the whole state, I'd say we're at about 30 to 35% coverage. So we're projecting about 700 to 800 cameras to be deployed in the state.
Well, one of the things that is truly important is to have the governor's support, which you have. And that is a truly great thing because he's saving lives, saving wildlife and everything. The one question which, if you want to continue, the one question I will want to ask at one point is what can we do to help to even get more out there? So,
I didn't know that we were pressed up against that time constraint, so I'll speed it up. You know, professors, we just
Well,
talk.
let me just
and
answer
talk.
that question. If you, I told Neil that the regents are the stars here, not the speakers. But I should have gone into more detail as to why that's important. If you could designate this CP2, which is at San Diego, right next to the earthquake shake room, I think what's called a multi-campus research initiative, that would be helpful and will allow funds to flow. Most of this money is being paid by utilities now through shareholder funds. Under a law that Jerry Brown signed starting in 2019, they can submit their safety plans to the CPUC, and if they're approved, they'll reimburse for the cost of any expenditures for safety purposes, and these, my God, are the best safety device you can find. So I'm quite sure they'll get all their money back going forward.
So this multi-campus research initiative that would be the host university would be UC San Diego. It'd be the Center of Public Preparedness. And why do we want an MRI? It does three things mostly. One, it facilitates collaboration with the other campuses, leveraging funds and technology for early detection, and it allows us a better chance of situational awareness. Two, it helps disseminate information amongst the community and the campuses and outreach to the public. The public needs to be informed. We need them to be prepared and educated. That's our job. And finally, we strengthen our education program for undergraduates and graduates because they're exposed to new technologies, they're exposed to meetings and collaboration, and they're trained to get good jobs in the private sector, in the universities, and in the government agencies like the USGS. So that would be, if we could get the support or help developing MRI with UC San Diego Center for Public Preparedness to be the host campus, that would be, I think, a great step forward to help solving these problems. So I'm just going to highlight a few more things. One, the Ferguson fire caused Yosemite to be closed. This was in July and August, and one of our jewels and tourism. This is another cascading disaster. The Thomas Fire in 2017 was one of the largest fires on record to that date. 2 firefighters lost their life in that fire. But in January, an atmospheric river pointed right at the burn region. In the burn region, we know when we burn the vegetation, the root structures that hold the soils is weakened. This causes damage to our reservoirs. Sonoma Water has been a big partner of ours and collaborator. We get black carbon in the water, we get sediments in the water, but what happens here too is we get debris flows. So 2 people died in the Thomas Fire, 23 people died overnight on January 8th, 2018 in Montecito.
I don't know if you can just take a look at that. Those rocks are going through the house. They're actually, you'll see the rocks coming out of the house. They entered from the back of the house. That was when the mudslides followed the fires.
These mudslides move at like 20 to 30 miles an hour. In the old days, you'd say the rocks were the size of an AMC Pacer, but the students don't know what that is. So you have to say it's a Fiat, okay? All right. So here, and the governor mentioned this, and I just want to bring this into sharp focus. This schematic is showing the amount in million metric tons of carbon CO2 equivalent released by wildfires. That here, it only includes wildfires on federal lands, not state lands here in California. This is the gains from our cap and trade from the previous year. So here in 2013, the Rim Fire, okay, 250,000 acres, is estimated that that one fire liberated 10 to 15 million metric tons of CO2, okay? We look at 2015, our benefits were 1.5 million metric tons over the previous emission year. The Rough Fire in Fresno, okay, which burnt about 100,000 acres, released 6 to 7 million metric tons of CO2. So, as the governor said, one average size fire erases all the gains of cap and trade.
Let me just repeat what I said before. By the way, the author is J.P. Maris, M-A-R-I-S, and the article was this Monday. It says, if California factored wildfire estimates into its final emissions for 2017, the state would have seen overall emissions rise, not fall. And then the article goes on to say, you know, and I don't blame anyone for this, but the state only looks at certain categories of emissions. So it's, for some reason, if you take a flight from LA to New York, they don't count that. But if you take a flight from LA to San Francisco, they count that. They don't seem to think that wildfires are man-made. Well, the utility involved acknowledged that their facilities in Paradise started the fire. I mean, there was an eruption, a spark, not like a tree falling on a line, but there was a combustion created by PG&E equipment in Paradise. Well, that's man-made. In any event, whether you count them or not in agency by agency, that pollution and those emissions are getting into the air and affecting everyone's health in a negative way. So in 2018, when the final report comes out from the insurance commissioner, I think you're going to see a big, probably 120, 125% negative factor. In other words, not only did all the good race, we lost ground beyond that. So there's a lot of urgency here from a perspective of saving lives, saving property, using resources more effectively, and as I say, trying to make progress on our climate change efforts.
So here, I have like two or 3 minutes. Okay, so here, these are, the brown are the dead trees, okay, from past years. The green are the newly dead trees, and you can see that as we're heating up this atmosphere and pine bark beetle, our forests are dying in front of our eyes. And this is high carbon material. It's not like grasslands. And the continuity of these dead forests could generate mass fires, okay? So here, we have longer drought. If you look here, our droughts are longer and more severe. Our fire season is year-round, and we have fire now when the wind blows, starting about October, and it goes all the way through December. When I first arrived here in California, Halloween was a great holiday because it delineated kind of when we had no rains to when it started raining again, and that's not the case. So these sustained droughts make our fuels even more tinted dry, yeah. So here, this is my last slide. See, I wasn't kidding. All right, so here, our whole group, well, some people say they're ready to be done and they've got like 30 more slides in the deck, right? So here, this early suppression is what our group's all about. We want to get at this fire and use technology to confirm the 911. We're developing AI, and we're working AI on the cameras, and we're making really good progress. I'm hope that sitting here next year, I can tell you that AI beats the 911 call, but that's not the case today, okay? And here, 2018 was the worst wildfire disaster in our history. Let's use technology to never let this happen again, and never let people be unprepared, and allow for more situational awareness and better real-time data for sequencing evacuations. And again, we thank you very much for your attention and allowing us to present what I think is compelling data of why we're going down this path.
Thank you very much, and I also want to thank Provost Brown, who's here. I failed to acknowledge his presence here, along with Chancellor
Can
Kosler.
I acknowledge one person too that we forgot is Dick McCarthy? Could you stand up, Dick? Okay, Dick McCarthy's the director of the California Seismic Safety Commission, and Rudy Murillo. Would you stand up, Rudy? Come on, Rudy, stand up. I know you can do it. Rudy Murillo has been instrumental in helping Graham and I forge this new technology. So thank you very much, Rudy and Dick.
Thank you. I know we have some questions. People have a couple of questions. So the first one would be Regent Lansing.
First of all, I really want to thank you for this presentation. It was extraordinary. I think I speak for everybody when you think the greatest fears when we are citizens of California is fire, earthquake, and mudslides, you know, and I think all of us have been touched by this in some way. All of us knew somebody that was hurt by one of the many fires, and certainly the mudslides in Montecito, and certainly earthquakes we've all experienced. So I think this should be one of UC's greatest priorities, and the data and the technology that you're presenting is just extraordinary. So I just want to say thank you in particular to Governor Davis, who actually appointed me as a regent. So 110 years ago, Gray, I'm still here. But at any rate, it's been one of my honors. And I just have to say, your devotion to public service in and out of office has always been an inspiration to me personally. You have been as engaged out of office as you were in office. So I want to thank the whole team, but I really want to thank Governor Davis for everything that you do every day to make our state better. And I personally hope this will be a big priority of UC. So thank you.
Thank you. And I want to second the congratulations to Gray for appointing Regent Lansing. She's been a terrific ally of the UC's for about 20 years now, 22 years, and she's done so much, so thank you. Chancellor Brostrom.
Thank you, and I would also just like to echo Regent Lansing's. This is tremendous research and really shows what the UC can do in a collaborative fashion. I was just curious, I was trying to do the math in my head about the number you need, because Governor Davis said that you have an 80-mile range, you know, pi r squared, that's, you know, 20,000 square miles. So you would think that you wouldn't need that many cameras to cover the whole state of California, although topography probably comes into
That's
to play in
exactly
terms
right.
of
So if it
line
was
of sight.
if we were a flat state, like, you know, those boring ones you drive through on
Nebraska or
yeah, I wasn't going to pick on anyone. Yes, you'd be right. And they see about 120 miles at night with the near infrared. But remember this, that 70-mile estimate is on those bluebird days that we don't always have here with air quality. And the topography, San Diego, so here's a perfect example. Your calculation works really well in San Diego, where the relief, we peak out at about 6,000, you know, the Laguna Mountains and Palomar, but they're gentle and rolling and they've been eroded. And then you get near the Sierra and the foothills and the canyons, and then you get into wine country. By the time you get to the next winery, you're car sick, right? You know, going through Sonoma and Napa. So, and then up north in Eureka, you've got compressional and you've got volcanic. So, if it was flatter or more like San Diego, would need less. A perfect example is we had a fire near Santa Rosa, right? And we had 10 cameras there, and only one could see it. Okay, so, you know, what Graham and I were evolving, and we discuss this all the time. Is it 700? Is it 1,000? It's the complication of topography. We use the Amazon cloud. We have better resolution than Google Earth. If you go on these cameras, you'll see that. We also use geosynchronous satellites, the GOES 16 and GOES 17 satellites, but they have a 2-kilometer pixel. By the time you might see a fire on that satellite, it could already be beyond you and you're on defense. So we're really excited to develop AI on cameras, individual cameras. So the AI knows the topography, it knows the fuels, it can determine how things change. So we're using every platform, and aircraft has been huge, fixed wing and rotary, getting on fires in rough areas, like the Holy Fire. Yeah, we're employing everything possible.
Regent Dagura.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I wanted to bring to your attention an article in the popular press. I'm not an academic or a scientist, but I do live in a fire area. So I read it, and it does also highlight the public service mission of the UC. It talks about research being done by UC Berkeley and to some extent UC Santa Cruz, not in responding to the fires, but in technology to develop in the Sierras to do controlled burns.
Okay.
And I would commend the article to people who are not scientists like me, because it was it was a very good article and made me think a lot. And it's in the August edition of the New Yorker.
So our colleague, our teammate, Joe Kerr, who was a captain at Orange County Fire, he did a lot. He's a specialist with fuels, and he did a lot of controlled burns. But controlled burns are getting tougher because where the smoke goes, okay, and whether they get aggressive, and Graham knows he had controlled burns in Nevada that actually burnt houses down. So controlled burns, our team supports that. It's just the time of year you can do this now is getting less and less with these drought conditions. And so we think that's a valuable tool, but our team also realizes that it's limited of how you can apply it.
Let me just offer a comment. Given the topography in California and how close people live to each other, I mean, I think Skirball Fire, I think that's the name of it, got part of Bel Air. Well, if you've ever driven through Bel Air, it's like one lane in, one lane out. Montecito, same thing. A lot of the same thing in the wine country. So evacuation alerts, there's a lot of room for improvement, but that doesn't give you the bang for the buck that these cameras give. We have to put these fires out within an hour, and we have the capacity to do it. We haven't had it before, and we have a governor who's totally engaged in making this happen. I mean, he spends, my guess is at least 5 to 6 hours a week on natural disaster preparation, meeting people, talking to victims, going to OES, having task force report back. All that stuff has happened and much more. So I'm optimistic, but if we can spot the fire and get to it quickly, we don't have to worry about evacuation alert, which are necessary, but hopefully only in the rarest of cases where we didn't get on offense on the fire.
Thank you. Regent Muwakil.
Thank you, Chair. First, thank you for your presentation. As a student at UC Santa Barbara during the Thomas Fire, I really appreciate that we're getting ahead of future disasters that may befall us. And I also wanted to highlight how great this is for the University of California to, through research, be able to tangibly affect the future of California and present a model for the world as to how to address some of these issues. So a great example of research having practical application to our day-to-day life and the future. One point of clarification for me, I'm curious about how the cameras, who's watching the cameras and how they can serve as an alerting mechanism. Are they going to be pretty much watched? Are they going to be viewed by specific parties who will then alert officials?
Right, so let me give you a few examples. So St. Helena Dispatch watches the cameras. So we have people that we know and we've developed relationships, so we're not calling them the day of a disaster, that work in these dispatch or Red Dog or the utilities all have their command centers. So when we go into a red flag warning, we're watching the cameras 24/7. And this is utility command centers, CAL FIRE command centers, county OES, so there's redundancies. So our cameras are fed into all of these, and all of these first responders can move the camera. The public cannot move the camera. The public can go in and zoom the camera it can time-lapse the camera so it can see fire behavior. And there's a map so they can see where the fire is with respect to them, so they're empowered. So here, coming up, and Graham and I don't sleep very much during the fall. We hate the fall. Okay, I'm the happiest guy on the planet come January. Okay, so yes, we do, but we're hoping that through research and development and machine learning, that artificial intelligence will push out a signal and tell us we have a detect. But right now, the artificial intelligence has a lot of false positives, and it doesn't detect the fires as quick as your eye. So 911 still wins. But your question's a really good one, and we're manning these cameras during the fall 24/7 at many different places.
And one thing that surprised me is that Graham, and to a lesser extent Neil, actually go out and determine the site at which the cameras will be installed. So I mean, it's like a little ragtag band here.
Wait a minute.
You know, that, I don't think there's a piece of legislation, except maybe for the budget line for the governor, that mentions the word camera. But we are just all volunteers trying to see this as a public safety measure that will do such good once it's fully deployed, which I hope will be no longer than 18 months, might be 24 months, but once it's fully deployed, these costs and this damage will remarkably be reduced.
We have only a couple minutes left before this committee is over. I've got 5 people that want to ask questions, so we'll try to go through it as quickly as we can to get the answers. Obviously generating a lot of interest, which is good. And we'll start with Chancellor Block. Oh, we now have 4 people, okay?
But before he goes, I want to just give a shout out to Chancellor Block. He's my local chancellor, and we do a lot of stuff together, and I think he's done a remarkable job. And I'll give you some feedback about our Nanosystem Institute. I went to John Monsioto had this thing on Tuesday, and the imaging is done at the Nanosystem Institute for heart disease. It's really cool.
Okay, Regent Sherman.
A couple quick questions. So I'm sure you're aware the insurance, fire insurance industry is complete disarray in California. I don't think any California admitted company is writing insurance in fire areas. So what effect are these cameras having on that? Is it starting to open up the market?
So I met with Commissioner Lara on Friday down at UC San Diego at the Shake Table. And I presented to him the work we're doing and this new technology. We're hoping that this, and we've seen it work because in the general fund, this $20 billion fund that Governor Newsom's put apart, San Diego Gas and Electric, if you just did by area, they would have to pay in 10% to that fund. And because they've developed this incredible network using the cameras and weather, and there's been no loss of life since 2017 and no large fire, they reduced their input to 5%. So that's an immediate response to encourage, and I want to say that Edison and PG&E have been incredible collaborators, and we've been putting out cameras. So all 3 utilities have stepped up and worked with us and collaborated with us. Graham was just at PG&E last week in their command center, helping them use the cameras more effectively. Viewing they're putting out weather stations and everything like this. So we're hoping that by increasing our detection and situational awareness, that this might give the insurance companies, they don't make money when they leave, so hopefully this could be a tipping point that would allow them to feel that this was not such a high risk.
Right. Can homeowners, property owners group together and get their own camera that they can
I have a
tie
card
in?
for you right after.
Okay, because I would think that like
No,
Malibu,
wait,
here locally, Malibu was devastating. I
Yes.
would think a group of homeowners for $70,000.
I just talked yesterday, well, if we build it at 70,000, if you convince your sheriff, because they all have towers and communication and backhaul, if you convince your Office of Emergency Services to let us hang a camera on their tower, $20,000 and it goes in pretty quick. okay? So using existing infrastructure knocks the price down by like a third, all right? If we have to build the tower and cement and everything, it goes to about $70,000. So, yes, we do have, we have a number of private entities and, reserves that have paid to have cameras, and it complements our view shed, so it's very helpful. So Malibu's an area,
Shouldn't we advertise that?
yes,
I mean, so the general public knows, I mean, that they can get this service. They can
Absolutely.
group together if they, to make the costs spread out over a geographic
I had a
area.
gentleman from Bel Air talk to me yesterday, saying he had a number of neighbors that want to put cameras on their property that have good view shed. And I explained to him that if he went to OES and the sheriff's office, that we could get a camera up maybe this year. If we have to build it, it takes a lot longer, and you won't be in the queue till next winter.
The good news is Dr. Driscoll has a booth out in front, and he's selling those cameras, and if you buy them today, okay, we are going to move.
Guy.
We are going to move on to Faculty Rep Gouvain.
Great research. I have a lot of questions about the research, which I'm not going to ask you now, but I did want to tell you that the Senate would want to extend support for you as we can in the development of this MRI.
Great.
And so you should really be talking to us and telling us, because there's a lot of expertise and training and development. There's a lot of human decision-making involved here. And so this is training undergraduates and graduate students, and the University of California can be directly involved in this future of this work.
Thank you.
And Faculty Rep Mart, our final question for the day.
Actually, I'm not a faculty rep, but thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, alumni.
Not even close.
You just have that professorial look. That,
Well, Jamal actually asked most of the question I had, but I was just curious if you're anticipating, you're going from 200 to 700 or whatever it is in the number, the scale, how is it going to be managed, and how is that going to be coordinated?
So we're growing now. We went from maybe 30 cameras back in 2013, 2014 to over 260 now. We're scaling. We're having more servers and computational firepower. We're hiring people. So we're scaling in the university, but this is where an MRI would be really helpful, is to help staff some of this so we can grow at the rate we need to grow to keep ahead of these cameras. The issue is this. With Graham and I, we started this thinking we were going to build all our own sites. And then Graham said, we're not going to do that. We're going to take advantage of all the wireless internet service providers, the low-hanging fruit, so we can get these cameras out quickly. Now, as we get down the road to patch in the view sheds that are tougher, we have to build our own systems that take longer, more expertise, solar panels, batteries. The thing we have at each of these stations that I didn't mention that's critical is we have to have 3 to 5 days of backup power by diesel or batteries, because when the companies do, like Edison shut Mammoth off yesterday. They shut them down, and they call it the PSPS, Public Service Power Shutdown. And so when we have to build these, it's going to take many more people. So we're growing as fast as we can. I'm hiring 2 people. My graduate students are involved. They've been tower certified. They've learned how to do safety. They've learned technology. They've learned IPs, how to talk on the internet and do computational things that will make their job application very competitive, okay? And so we're growing as fast as we can, but we have a really good dynamic in the group, and we want to make sure that we hire great people, okay? But we are the University of California, and it's second to none.
I do have a question which I forgot from earlier, Regent Riley.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation and the work. So sort of to dovetail on the last question, so what is the maintenance program for all of these cameras, and who is responsible for that maintenance?
Well,
there are a lot of issues with weather.
Yesterday, I was cleaning cameras in the field. I was also up
Band of one.
Yeah, well, no, it's a band of about 15 of us.
Okay.
And so here, as we grow and operation, maintenance, and improvement, we shift over. So right now, we're mostly in deploy mode, installation, and we're transitioning slowly that we have a number of cameras, operation, maintenance, and improvement. The improvement is like AI or new software. We've just rolled out a new package for the website. So we're constantly doing this. So the transition will make this easier once we have the density of cameras out, because then we'll just have to maintain them, mounting them, getting them. It's a 3-stage process. So we mount the camera physically. We have to connect through backhaul to get the data back to a command center. And we have to get it up on the public website. So the transition is going to be easier once we have all the cameras deployed that we believe we need.
Right.
Operation, maintenance, and improvements will be much less than trying to balance both. Does that kind of make sense?
Sure.
Thank you. The Lieutenant Governor, before she left, she had 2 questions that she wanted me to ask you, so I will do that.
Okay.
First question was, and I think the governor answered this question, how long it will take to get all the cameras deployed, and I think you said between 18 and 24 months. Is that what you?
Yeah, no, Graham probably did the same thing as I did at that estimate. It's the easy deployments on towers. We've captured a lot of that. We're working with WISPs and building out new towers. But I would say that 300 cameras a year is about what our capacity right now. So would be at 600 at the end of next year, and would be close to covering the entire state at 900. We're wrestling with it. Is it going to be 700, 900, 1,000? And we'll know that as we fill in these gaps in view sheds and topography. So I would say that 300 cameras a year is a good metric to use, understanding how they're going to grow.
And the final question I had was, where is the command center? Is it at UCSD for all of the cameras?
No, right now the command center is at UNR. We're duplicating that here at UCSD for resilience, so we'll have another command center that'll be in the Center for Public Preparedness. And the Center for Public Preparedness will be for all of these hazards: earthquakes, landslides, atmospheric rivers, fires, okay? So we'll have a complete command center there, and that duplicates for resiliency what we have at UNR.
Well, thank you very much. If there's any closing comment before we adjourn, I think Provost Brown wants to say something, and then.
Just something real brief. One is just really thank you, Regent Lieb. You shared with me your vision that this would be actually the first of a series of periodic presentations that highlight the partnership between the University of California and the state in solving some of the state's most pressing problems. Here we have fire prevention being clearly a very pressing problem for the state. And this approach and the value of this approach. We look forward to more presentations queued up for this committee, and you see the danger of bringing faculty, because they will lobby for support for their research. We would rather have the state invest in solving the problems, but not picking who best to pick to solve that problem, and have a competitive process. But I have to say that. But that aside,
I'm going to move this way.
But that aside, one of the most beautiful things that the Regents can do is highlight that partnership, highlight the value of that partnership, and advocate for investment in the kinds of problems that the state faces. The university stands ready to partner to solve those problems.
Great. Thank you very much, Provost Brown. Appreciate those comments.
I just want to make one closing comment.
Governor?
This would not have been possible without you, Mr. Chair, and I think the committee in general, with its visit yesterday, is just doing great things. I mean, most people who've been to the University of California just understand what a jewel it is, but if you haven't been here, you really don't know too much about it. So more public exposure, more interaction, you learn, the public learns. I think that's very useful. we would like to keep in touch with you, and I don't really have an ask, but I just want you to be thinking about this. It'd be awfully nice if that 24 months that it'll probably take to get all the cameras deployed could be reduced in time. Now, you can't just go out and hire 15 people and put it up, because it takes a lot of skill and a lot of academic horsepower, but there has to be a way that that 24-month period can be accelerated in some form or fashion. So if you can just be thinking about that, and we'll think about it too, because the sooner we get them up, the safer people will be, and all the other benefits I suggested earlier will start being realized, rather than having to wait for 24 months for everyone to get the benefit of this public safety feature.
Well, it's probably one of the biggest issues we're facing in California, so the faster we can harness those resources to get those cameras up, the better. So thank you very much. And that concludes our public engagement meeting for today, and I appreciate the governor coming in, and also Dr. Driscoll, and Provost Brown, and Chancellor Kosala, and also Claire Holmes, who was here earlier. So thank you very much, and until next time. I will say that our next meeting will be at UC Merced. We're going to have a road show. Chancellor Brostrom will be there to host us. We haven't quite figured out the date, but it's going to be sometime in early December, and we're going to hopefully have a really great turnout for that too. And we're going to go into the community and talk to people in Merced, as well as deal with the foundation, and talk to all of the participants that make that university fantastic. So thank you.